Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Super excited today. We have an awesome guest, and we're going to be talking about something that doesn't get talked about that often. But welcome, Lynn Herrick, to the show today. Lynn, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. And we want to thank our audience. We couldn't be doing this show without you. And so thank you very much for chiming in and being here to, listen to the great stories of our guests that show up on the Will Talk podcast. So let me give you a little bit of insight to Lynn, and then we're just going to jump into our conversation. She has an extensive bio, so I'm only going to give you some highlights from that because you'll understand why as we start our conversation. But Lynn is an incisive, effective, and creative executive with a remarkable 20-year history of building high-growth companies. She demonstrates expertise across multiple industries and disciplines, including technology, telecommunications, manufacturing, and healthcare. She has consistently exceeded company goals and driven exceptional results. Her career started in legal and human resources, and today she is a strategic leader overseeing operations that extend to every corner of an enterprise. And this is really important as you listen to our conversation today, so that you understand why this conversation is needed. Lynn is also adept at simplifying complex business challenges. She possesses a unique ability to implement efficient and effective solutions at every stage of a company's life cycle. She played an integral role in scaling Great Call, a health and safety company, as it grew from a pre-revenue startup to a successful acquisition by Best Buy in 2018, valued at $800 million. Furthermore, she has deep experience in leading mergers and acquisitions, cross-functional integrations, and corporate transformations. So, Lynn, welcome. You have a super impressive resume and bio, and I know I only tapped in on a little bit, but I think the important thing here is to express how you have shifted, how you've pivoted across a number of different types of businesses. So maybe just start with sharing with the audience what has led you to the work that you're doing today.
Sure. And first of all, I just want to say the fact that podcasts like yours exist today for women growing their careers is so incredible. Because when I think back to, all points of my career, there was, unless I ran into a woman who was doing something really cool, there was no one to talk to or learn from. So I love that this podcast exists. And I was thinking about what really led me to all of these changes. And I was the kind of kid that from a really, really early age knew I wanted to be a lawyer. Like 12. And I stayed on that path the whole time, which has its pros and its cons. But I really knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to do international law. But on top of that, I come from an entrepreneurial family. And I knew I wanted to be an integral part of a business. And I thought I would do that through the law only. But I knew I wanted to be part of a business, grow a business, and maybe do something differently than I had seen or that I knew existed. And so that meant change. That meant taking on additional roles because you simply can't do that as general counsel. You can't change the culture of a company and change its outcome by being general counsel. So that's really, I think, what led me to raising my hand multiple times to make some changes.
Awesome. Well, and I'm so glad that you did because, you and I've talked about this and we'll bring our audience into the loop. Like oftentimes, especially as women, we'll stay in a career because, maybe we're not ticking off all the boxes. Or sometimes it might be fear that, what if I do put my hand up and I succeed, or if I fail, right? Those are usually the stories that we tell ourselves. And you've had, such a diversified, with different industries, different roles in those industries, but maybe talk about what gave you the confidence to make the moves in the first place, because I think that's the critical step, right? Is just say yes.
Yeah, I think I worked really hard in my life to try to find inner validation as being the most important things versus external validation. And I think the external validation is what holds us back. Like if I say out loud, I want to be the COO of a company, what are people going to think or say? And for me, when I did that the first time to my CEO and said, I would like to be the COO of this company, he said, well, you can't be COO. And I was like, well, why? And he said, well, because you haven't run technology. And I said, okay, well, then give me technology. Now, a lot of women at that point would have just stopped because someone just said no to you and someone put a hurdle or a barrier or went to your most insecure place, because I didn't know how to run technology, but like to your most insecure place. And I think there's a part of me that, first of all, I have a great support system around me. So I know that if I fail, I'll be caught, right? Personally and professionally, someone will help me. But I really wanted to forge a path for other women. And I really wanted to prove that women could do this. And that was really important to me. So I think that gave me the courage, because if I don't do this and if I don't prove it, then all the people behind me, it's going to be so much harder for them. So I think that was a big part of the courage. And, you know, courage grows as your career grows. I certainly wasn't ready to make that shift when I was young. But I also observed a lot of people who were really good at what they did, and a lot of people who had titles and weren't that good at what they did. And I felt like I could be on the side of people who were good at what they did.
Awesome. I love that. And you can learn so much from those who are not good, right? Like, because you learn what not to do.
Absolutely.
And we forget that, right? And you know, I hear clients will often, and not just clients, but friends will complain about, oh, they're a horrible boss or they're whatever. But it's, what are you learning along the way, right? And you can use that as an opportunity for your own growth. So I want to tap into a little bit about what you said with, I want to be the COO, but I didn't have technology skills. And I hear that often, right? And we know from a research perspective, if women aren't ticking off 90% of the boxes, we won't raise our hand often. So what skills or what attributes did you tap into to be able to have the confidence to say, yes, you know what, so what, I don't know technology, but I can do this?
Right. Well, I think, so I'm not afraid to make a decision. And I really think leadership is about making a decision. And the more and more I observed about technology, and to be honest, I didn't take technology on. I got the COO role without it, but I will be taking it on my next venture. But what I observed is that really, if you're running technology, you're making hard choices, and you're not implementing it. You're not doing the day-to-day. You're certainly not coding. But the leaders that I've seen not do very well in that role just really struggle when it comes to making the decision, try to please everybody. So I've learned over the years, I might not always get it right, but I'm comfortable making the decision. And then if I don't get it right, we'll fix it.
Right.
And I'm very upfront with my team about that, right? I never say, well, I know best. This is the best decision I'm making right now with the information I have. If it doesn't end up being right, we'll fix it. So I think that's a big part of it. Probably my best skill is taking something very complex and breaking it down into measurable, easy to accomplish steps. And that's your best way to move forward. And I think that's missing in technology quite a bit. You get so overwhelmed by all the things that need to be done, you don't even start sometimes. And so I'm also pretty good at setting a vision. And these are things I didn't know if I would be good at until I stepped into leadership roles. I'm good at setting a vision, and I really attract a lot of hard-working people around me. I have super high expectations of myself, so I have it for my team as well. And I have found that when you have those expectations, only the people that want to live up to those expectations join you.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of my success has been being surrounded by really hardworking, effective, fun, because we always have fun first, fun people who want to join me and build something great. And so I think that's also a big part of the success that we've had as a company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a number of things that you talked about there, like about the decision making as an example, that would be true in any type of operation, whether it's technology or not. And, you know, technology, to your point, like it is evolving and accelerating so fast. how can you possibly stay on top of, even if you do know how to code and you know the intricacies of technology, right? Because it's
Exactly.
the needs are changing and the platforms are changing. What's great today might not be tomorrow. But that is true, I think, with so many things, even like healthcare as an example. And you've had experiences in healthcare and retail. Like there's so many competing demands and complexities that are coming at you all the time. Retail, as an example, supply chain, right? Like supply chain has changed completely over the last several years. And so part of that is the decision making, but I also love how you talked about set that vision and attract the right people, because leaders used to, I think we thought leaders had to know everything. and we don't. It's about how do you attract the right talent for what's happening today, no matter what the problem is, right?
That's right. And often the people that have the most expertise are not the best leaders because they're really good at their expertise in doing what they do. So I've found that if you find those people, bring them together and then lead transparently. So in my groups, we discuss it as a team, pros and cons. If I disagree with you, I will tell you why. And often as I become, more comfortable in the role, I will flip it and say, okay, I know it's easy to be the person giving me the advice, but let's flip it. If I were not here right now and you had to make this choice, what would you do? And I find that that's been very effective, one, because you really get people's gut instincts, but two, because I'm preparing them for their next level of leadership. And I have found doing that together, being open, being transparent, batting ideas around, but then knowing that I will ultimately make the choice has just built some really, really high performing, effective teams.
Love it. Love it. So, Lynn, what do you think holds most people back from their true potential?
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear. And here's what happens with fear, because I've actually been, I don't have this feeling. So I've been watching other people and talking and learning, seeing it. My children are all in college right now, watching them, trying to figure out the world. So there's two things you can do when something happens, right? You can take action or you can do nothing because you're fearful of something. And my first instinct is to take action, period. Even if it's one small step, I'm faced with a problem, what am I going to do? What I've learned is that many, many, many people just disappear.
Yeah.
They don't take that first step, even if they know it's the right thing. And I was trying to figure out, what is the fear of? It's fear of change. It's fear of instability. I think it's fear of what will other people say, fear of that external validation, fear of being embarrassed, fear of raising your hand and saying, I want this is really scary, right? Because someone's going to react to it. However, if you don't raise your hand and say you want something, it's likely never going to happen. So I think we have to help people realize that even if you're scared, take a step, take some action, see what can happen. Nothing happens if you are fearful, right?
It's true.
It's most amazing when people aren't even that happy in their work life or in their role or whatever it is, but they're so scared to make a change.
Yeah.
And I think it's mostly because they're scared of what will others say? What will people think if I fail? One of the ways that we've lived our lives in my family is we're very conservative financially. So we built a backdrop. So when we moved here from Michigan, my husband and I in San Diego, we had 3 little kids. He was working for Hewlett Packard. And I said, I'd like to go to a small startup and I'd like to try. And we have the backup, we don't live beyond our means. We have this backup. And that led to all this beautiful success. But it was really a decision we made that I would take some risk.
Yeah.
And I think that is what really holds people back, is that fear of taking some risk.
Yeah. And Lynn, from your perspective, what is the fallout or the consequences if you don't take the risk or if you don't take the action?
I think for me, it would have been like, I could have, I would have, I should have, I wanted to, but I didn't. And I see all these, it's depicted in books and movies and other things where people look at their lives in their 50s and they're like, I thought I was going to do so many other things. And if I'm honest, I'm living the life I dreamt of having, and I think it's because I did try those things. And if I really liked being a lawyer and I really liked being general counsel. And if that had been the path, that would have been the path. It's a really great path. But I wanted more, and I'm glad we put ourselves in a position where I could try. And the first company I went to was not going to make it. We were managing Blackberries for companies. Like that was not going to make it. And so I had to make a change. So that's the other thing. You have to know that it might not be one change. It might be 2 or 3 changes before you get to what you want.
Yeah.
But you have to take those steps. You have to try.
I think so often we get fear is a big part. Absolutely. There's also a bit of this complacency, right? That don't rock the boat. And that can happen in many ways, whether it's even speaking up. If you think your company is going down the wrong path, right? Like it's easier to not say anything because then you're not highlighted or potentially could be condemned for your opinion. But there's so many consequences when we don't do that, because you're absolutely right. We play the coulda, woulda, shoulda scenario in our minds, and then there are regrets. And it's thinking, for me, like yourself, I look more at what are the possibilities, right? Exactly. Like if I don't step out there and I don't, even if I take this podcast as an example, I could have gone through the whole, oh gosh, what if nobody listens? And what if people don't like the messages that I'm bringing? Like I could have gone through this whole fear thing, but from a mindset perspective, it was very much about how do I escalate the voices of women in particular? How do I share things that I know we're all struggling with or we're all thinking about? And like, it's like, to me, it was a no-brainer, right? So it's, how do you start to do this and serve others? And there will always be people who don't like,
right.
But it's going to be more that do, right? And so to your point of like stepping out and putting your hand up and saying, yes, I'm saying it out loud. I want to be COO, or I want to have this, phenomenal podcast. Once you say it, you can't really take it back.
Right. And even if it doesn't end up being the right thing, right? Even if the role is not the right thing or the podcast is not the right thing, what it likely opened up, the next door, the next window that you don't even know you opened, that's the part that gets me excited, yes. Right? So even when you don't get something, you apply for something, you don't get it, and that door closes, I'm always like, yes, but another window opened, you just don't know it yet.
Yeah.
And that part is really, really exciting to me versus, well, I know this, I'll just stay here because it's okay. Yeah. That doesn't excite me.
Yeah. And you don't want to wake up someday and say, I didn't attempt that. Right. Because even what you said a moment ago about your kids, right? They're in university and, it's sometimes it's not about what we say as much as it is what we're doing or how we are being in the world. And so they're seeing mom take these risks, and they're seeing mom go from lawyer to operations from healthcare to telecommunications to technology. Like, you're painting a picture that there are so many possibilities if you're curious, if you want to learn, if you're not afraid to take the risk. And so you're modeling something for them that, that's priceless. It's priceless.
Thank you. And also that every little decision doesn't matter as much as there's so much pressure on them with every little decision. Well, if you decide that, but you're actually attracted to this later, then you will make the shift, right? Whereas or at least I grew up like, whatever you chose to be, that's what you're going to be, and that's all you're going to be, and that's it. And now I know the world is full of possibilities, and there are big companies where you can get great training, and there are small companies where you can do great things, and there's a lot of things in between. So I love that I see a world with like endless possibilities versus you must make a choice when you are 18 years old and then stick with it for the rest of your life, which is really sad, but so many people have done it.
Yeah. Well, yes. And even, so we could go down a whole scientific conversation here, how, for so many years, we believed the brain was formed by a certain age, and that your learning capabilities were by this age. And now we know that that's just not true, that it's up to you to continue learning. And, people will say, well, I've been doing this my whole life, so I can't change. And it's, you can actually, but it's an internal thing with you. You can choose not to, or you can choose to. And you're 100% correct when I think about that, how we try to put people in a box, it drives me crazy, right? And my youngest is started first year of university, and I remember a gentleman that she had a lot of respect for. He said to her, he goes, Zoe, he said, you will have 6, 7, even 8 careers in your life. He said, so it really doesn't matter. He said, get your foundation and understand that university is about learning about what you like and what you don't like. He said, I started out as a professional basketball player, and then I became a principal, and now I'm a broadcaster. And he goes, so, you don't know where your path is going to take you, but never stop learning. And I think that's what I see with you, Lynn. Like, you are constantly learning and stretching yourself to understand different industries, different components of a career.
Yeah, well, back to the science. When I learned you could create new pathways and new neurons in your brain, so in my late 30s, I was like, what? I had no idea, because I really thought, like, you're this way, Lynn, and that's just how you are.
Yeah, that's it.
And when I learned I could change things, I really worked on, like, well, I don't love this part of myself. Let's work on it. I do like this. Let's double up on that. And it really changed my whole outlook. So I think anyone can change at any time. And we didn't know that growing up, or at least I didn't know it.
Well,
So
likewise.
I love that. Love, love, love that.
Yes, and we need to encourage more of that. Like, helping people to understand that there are many perspectives in how we view life, how we view problems, how we view organizations. And it doesn't mean that one is right, one is wrong. It's different perspectives based on realities, right? And when you can come to terms with that, I think that does help to open up the different possibilities that are available. And that's also from what you were saying earlier about your team. I think that's something that you're tapping into is how do you extract all of those different perspectives to help you build whatever that is that you need to build or shift, right? Because when everybody's a part of that and they're bringing their experiences, it gives you that diversified view of what can actually take place.
Yeah. And I love teams. I like bringing diverse ideas together and seeing what you can create. It's always better than one person. And it's taken time. I mean, I brought people into the team who did not want help, and they did not want to open, and they did not want to share. And I don't force it, but you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And they just get better and better when you have that openness and creativity. And I was going to say, I do meet with a lot of women one-on-one now and help them as they're working through things. And the number one question I always say is, what do you want? And they eventually get there and tell you, because everybody wants it. There's a thing. Everybody wants a thing.
There is a thing.
And my next question is, who have you told?
Yeah.
And it's usually nobody. And so their first assignment is to go tell 3 people.
Yeah.
Because if you don't put it out in the universe, it is unlikely to happen. You can't have your own secret plan. You need help, especially in corporate America, to make a plan work. Yeah. And my experience is most people want to help.
Yes.
If you tell me you want to achieve this thing, nothing would give me more pleasure than helping you achieve that thing. You're going to have to do your part, but I'm going to help you. So I think that's another thing women have to realize, like, people want to help you.
Yeah.
But you have to tell them.
You have to tell them. And it's, to your point, it's saying it out loud for yourself, because then you're testing the water, right? Is that really what I want? Like, because you could say, I want to be the CEO, or you could say, I think I want to be the CEO or the CEO.
I want to.
Yeah. And so there's a very different energy that takes place when you're saying it with conviction, right? I had a call last week with this young lady, and we were talking about her basically her goals, and she had finished her MBA, and she was struggling to get in with the right companies, and like just was getting rejected. And we talked about like that definitiveness of, here is who I am, here's what I want to be, and stop letting that define you. And then how do you navigate that? So to your point about being transparent and talking to the right people so that it becomes very concrete in the universe that, hey, yes, this is what I'm going to do. And I said, you have to start behaving as if, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
otherwise the energy that you're putting out comes across that you're not really serious about it. It's just, I think this is what I want. And so it sounds like, you've been open to putting your hand up, you're tapping into skills that can be used no matter what industry or what type of role that you're in.
Yeah, and I'll double down on that energy. I didn't understand that for the first decade of my career. And when I finally did understand it and took big steps to make sure the energy I was putting out was what I was feeling on the inside, even if it felt uncomfortable in the beginning, and it did feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but then eventually they met each other. And then it wasn't work anymore. Then it wasn't work. But I was really putting out a negative energy that I didn't even realize I was putting out. And it took some hard feedback to listen and hear it. And then some, hard conversations with yourself about how you make this change. But it was around the same time I learned you could make this change. And it was a huge switch for me. So that's another thing. Even if things aren't going the way that you want, you can change it, right? So if the career path hasn't been going, the company where you are, you've already have a reputation that doesn't work, change it. But when you go to the next place, take action. Make sure you do something differently. That's the other thing I see people do. Like they keep doing the same thing, getting the same outcome, and they're frustrated. It's like, you're gonna have to change something.
Well, and that's such a great point, right? We all know the definition of that's insanity. Hoping you're going to get Yeah, and that is so important. Like you have the ability and the opportunity to create the life you want. And every day is a new day that you get to start that. Even if you are with the same company, you can start to shift that. But, it's up to you to take responsibility and take the risk that are going to help you achieve what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah.
So Lynn, if you could share maybe one or two things that you think our audience that would be beneficial for them to leave with today, what would be two pieces of advice that you would want to share?
Yeah, I would say build yourself a network. Some people call it a board of directors, some people call it a network, some people, whatever you want to call it. Go find someone whose career you admire and learn from them. Find some really true good friends that are going to prop you up, and when you're not feeling your best, are going to tell you you're awesome. Make sure, take care of your finances. Make sure you have some money put aside so you can take some risk. And if you don't know how to do that, because we don't actually teach people how to manage money, go get help with that really early. I found out early on that a lot of the women that worked for me had no idea how to manage money. And then they were letting their husbands do it, who also had no idea how to manage money. And so we did a lot of sessions on how to manage money. So I think that's really important for women. And if you don't know how to do that, there's a lot of good resources out there that aren't expensive that can teach you how to do that, because that's part of your network. Part of your board of directors is doing that. Listen to podcasts like this. If you like to read books, read books. But listen, learn. There's a lot of really good advice out there. Often it feels like, oh yeah, but you were at that company with that situation with that. I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna have the same situation, but the advice, the learnings, the teachings you can take with you. So I would say really build yourself a substantial foundation so that if you need to, if you fail a little, if you take a step back, there's lots of people catching you. If you have the means, get yourself a personal coach.
Thank you. I was going to say that
one. Invaluable. I had one. She was with me for 5 years, changed my life. So if you can do that, or if you can find a company to fund it, absolutely do that. And then my second piece of advice really is to take action, even if it scares you.
Yeah.
One step at a time, one piece of action. You do the first thing, nothing bad happened. You take a breath and you do the next thing. And if you don't know what action to take, which I think some people don't, that's when the personal coach, the mentors, the advice really comes in to help you.
Yeah. Love that. Love all that you shared there. And so important, right? Because you're not in it alone. And you can see that just from our conversation today. There's lots of different resources you can tap into to really help you, be the person you want to be and have the fulfillment you want to have. Because it's not always about work either. It's a good balance or having harmony with your personal and professional lives.
Right.
But sometimes we need that expertise that's external to help us to really see what's working for us, what's working against us. So Lynn, this has been a great conversation, and thank you for sharing. Very inspiring. And I love how, you're able to really step back and look at things from the perspective of possibility. And I would say that would be something for our audience to take away today, is when you put that barrier up, really challenge yourself to reframe that into a statement of possibility. It's easy to say, well, what if I fail? Well, what if you succeed? Right?
Exactly.
So push yourself to your point, take that action, take that step to really support yourself. And don't forget, when you take those micro movements, those actions, to celebrate, because that's a big deal. It's a big deal to take that step. Yeah.
I agree. And there will be ups and downs. It's not all smooth, but you can weather the downs and you can learn from them. And the downs also open new windows. You just don't know it yet.
Exactly. And you know what? That's to your point about listening to podcasts or following certain people on social media, where it is more positive, more possibility thinking. Those are really important steps for you to take, because it's what you and how you surround yourself with information you're taking in. It's easy to get caught in, the media and the negative, and it's important that we're discerning what serves us best. And, if you're curious about your leadership, like, you can certainly go on the Will Empowered website. We have a free leadership quiz. It'll give you insight as to how you're showing up. And that's a free tool, to help you really look at, where am I today, and start to think about, where do you want to be? So that's at Will Empowered, 1L, Women in Leadership Empowered. And that's free for you to participate in. So any parting words, Lynn, before we wrap up here today? This has been a great conversation, and I love the way your brain works.
Thank you. I love this topic, and people can find me on LinkedIn. Happy to help out. Really, really want to bring forward this next generation of female leadership. Men too. I certainly do plenty of that. But we've opened a path for women, and just kind of take that path and go for it, because there's a lot of good opportunity out there.
Love it. So you heard that. You can connect with Lynn on LinkedIn. That's Lynn Herrick. And, if you have questions after you've listened to the podcast, feel free. You can reach out to Lynn. You can reach out to myself, either at Vicki Bradley or at Will Empowered. We're happy to answer questions. Or if you hear or think of topics that you would like to learn more about, feel free to reach out to us and share that, hey, this is some things I would like to learn. And we thank you. We know you have choices as to what podcast you listen to. So we thank you for tuning in to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. That means the world to us, because that keeps us going. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Lynn, thank you so much for taking time out today to speak with us and share your journey, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. Really, really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Awesome. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on the next Women in Leadership Talk podcast.